This is for you, dear viewer. Whatever you're going through, whatever monsters you're fighting, whatever dragons need slain, this battle is for you. Rudyard Kipling said it best in his poem, "If you can force your heart and nerve and sinew to serve your turn long after they are gone, and hold on when there is nothing in you, except the will which says to them, hold on." Tonight, in the Hall of Heorot, Beowulf faces his monster. And maybe, just maybe, it helps you face yours. Welcome back to Doing Stuff Studios. We continue on with our reading of Seamus Heaney's translation of Beowulf, Grendel's Attack. Then down the brave man lay with his bolster under his head, and his whole company of sea rovers at rest beside him. None of them expected they would ever see the homeland again, or get back to his native place and the people who reared him. They knew too well the way it was before. How often the Danes had fallen prey to death in the mead hall, but the Lord was weaving a victory on his war loom for the weather Geats. Through the strength of one they all prevailed. They would crush their enemies and come through in triumph and gladness. The truth is clear. Almighty God rules over mankind and always has. Then, out of the night, came the Shadow Stalker, stealthy and as long as God disallowed it, the fiend could not bear them to his shadow born. One man, however, was in fighting mood, awake and on edge, spoiling for action. In off the moors, down through the mist bands, God-cursed Grendel came greedily loping. The bane of the race of men roamed forth, hunting for a prey in the high hall. Under the cloud murk he moved towards it, until it shone above him, a sheer keep of fortified gold. Nor was it the first time he had scouted the grounds of Hrothgar's dwelling, although never in his life before or since did he find harder fortune or hall defenders. Spurned and joyless, he journeyed on ahead and arrived at the bawn. The iron-braced door turned on its hinge when his hands touched it. Then his rage boiled over. He ripped open the mouth of the building, maddening for blood, pacing the length of the patterned floor with his loathsome tread, while a baleful light, flame more than light, flared from his eyes. He saw many men in the mansion, sleeping, a ranked company of kinsmen and warriors quartered together. And his glee was demonic, picturing the mayhem. Before morning he would rip life from limb and devour them, feed on their flesh, but his fate that night was due to change. His days of ravening had come to an end. Mighty and canny, Hygelac's kinsman was keenly watching for the first move the monster would make, nor did he keep him waiting, but struck suddenly and started in. He grabbed and mauled a man on his bench, bit into his bone lappings, bolted down his blood, and gorged on him in lumps, leaving the body utterly lifeless, eaten up hand and foot. Venturing closer, his talon was raised to attack Beowulf, where he lay on his bed. He was bearing in with open claw when the alert hero's comeback and armlock forestalled him utterly. The captain of evil, discovering himself in a hand grip harder than anything he had ever encountered in any man on the face of the earth. Every bone in his body quailed and recoiled. He could not escape. He was desperate to flee to his den and hide with the devil's litter, for in all his days he had never been clamped or cornered like this. Then Hygelac's trusty retainer recalled his bedtime speech, sprang to his feet, and got a firm hold. Fingers were bursting, the monster backtracking, the man overpowering. The dread of the land was desperate to escape, to take a roundabout road and flee to his lair in the fens. The latching power in his fingers weakened. It was the worst trip the terrormonger had taken to Heorot. And now the timbers trembled and sang, a hall session that harrowed every Dane inside the stockade. Stumbling in fury, the two contenders crashed through the building. The hall clattered and hammered, but somehow survived the onslaught and kept standing. It was handsomely structured, a sturdy frame braced with the best of blacksmith's work inside and out. The story goes that as the pair struggled, the mead benches were smashed and sprung off the floor, gold fittings and all. Before then, no shielding elder would believe there was any power or person upon earth capable of wrecking their horn-rigged hall unless the burning embrace of fire engulf it in flame. Then an extraordinary wail arose, and bewildering fear came over the Danes. Everyone felt it who heard that cry as it echoed off the wall. A god-cursed scream and strain of catastrophe, the howl of a loser, the lament of the hell serf keening his wound. He was overwhelmed, manacled tight by the man who of all men was foremost and strongest in the days of his life. But the Earl Troop's leader was not inclined to allow his caller to depart alive. He did not consider that life of much account to anyone anywhere. Time and again, Beowulf's warriors worked to defend their lord's life, laying about them as best they could with their ancestral blades. Stalwart in action, they kept striking out on either side, seeking to cut straight to the soul. When they joined the struggle, there was something they could not have known at the time, that no blade on earth, no blacksmith's art, could ever damage their demon opponent. He had conjured the harm from the cutting edge of every weapon. But his going away out of this world and the days of his life would be agony to him, and his alien spirit would travel far into the fiend's keeping. Then he who had harrowed the hearts of men with pain and affliction in former times, and had given offense also to God, found that his bodily powers failed him. Hygelac's kinsmen kept him helplessly locked in a hand grip. As long as either lived, he was hateful to the other. The monster's whole body was in pain. A tremendous wound appeared on his shoulder. Sinews split, the bone lappings burst. Beowulf was granted the glory of winding. Grendel was driven under the fen banks, fatally hurt, to his desolate lair. His days were numbered. The end of his life was coming over him. He knew it for certain, and one bloody clash had fulfilled the dearest wishes of the Danes. The man who had lately landed among them, proud and sure, had purged the hall, kept it from harm. He was happy with his night work and the courage he had shown. The Geat captain had boldly fulfilled his boast to the Danes. He had healed and relieved a huge distress, unremitting humiliations. The hard fate they'd been forced to undergo, no small affliction. Clear proof of this could be seen in the hand the hero displayed high up near the roof. The whole of Grendel's shoulder and arm, his awesome grip. This morning came, and many a warrior gathered, as I've heard, around the gift hall, clan chiefs flocking from far and near, down wide-ranging roads, wondering greatly at the monster's footprints. His fatal departure was regretted by no one who witnessed his trail, the ignominious marks of his flight, where he'd skulked away, exhausted in spirit and beaten in battle, bloodying the path, hauling his doom to the demon's mare. The bloodshot water wallowed and surged. There were loathsome upthrows and overturnings of waves and gore and wound slurry. With his death upon him, he had dived deep into the marsh den, drowning out his life and his heathen soul. Hell claimed him there. Then away they rode, the old retainers, with many a young man following after. a troop on horseback, high in spirits on their bay steeds. Wolfgang's doings were praised over and over again. Nowhere, they said, north or south, between the two seas, or under the tall sky on the broad earth, was there anyone better to raise a shield or to rule a kingdom. Yet there was no laying blame on their lord, the noble Hrothgar. He was a good king. At times the war band broke into a gallop, letting their chestnut horses race wherever they found the good ground going. Meanwhile, a thane of the king's household, a carrier of tales, a traditional singer, deeply schooled in the lore of the past, linked a new theme to a strict meter. The man started to recite with skill, rehearsing Beowulf's triumphs and feats in well-fashioned lines, entwining his words. He told what he'd heard, repeated in songs about Sigmund's exploits. All those many feats and marvels, the struggles and wanderings of Wale's son, things unknown to anyone except Fitela, feuds and foul doings confided by uncle to nephew when he felt the urge to speak of them. Always they had been partners in the fight, friends in need. They killed giants, their conquering swords had brought them down. After his death, Sigmund's glory grew and grew, because of his courage when he killed the dragon, the guardian of the horde. Under grey stone he had dared to enter, all by himself, to face the worst without Fitela. But it came to pass that his sword plunged right through those radiant scales and drove into the wall. The dragon died of it. His daring had given him total possession of the treasure hoard, his to dispose of however he liked. He loaded a boat. Wale's son weighted her hold with dazzling spoils. The hot dragon melted. Sigmund's name was known everywhere. He was utterly valiant and venturesome, a fence round his fighters, and flourished therefore after King Hermod's prowess declined, and his campaigns slowed down. The king was betrayed, ambushed in Jutland, overpowered, and done away with. The waves of his grief had beaten him down, made him a burden, a source of anxiety to his own nobles. That expedition was often condemned in those earlier times by experienced men who relied on his lordship for redress, who presumed that the part of a prince was to thrive on his father's throne and defend the nation, the shielding land where they lived and belonged, its holdings and strongholds. Such was Beowulf in the affection of his friends and everyone alive. But evil entered into Heorot. Meanwhile, the Danes kept racing their mounts down the sandy lanes. The light of day broke and kept brightening. Bands of retainers galloped in excitement to the gabled hall to see the marvel, and the king himself, guardian of the ring hoard, goodness in person, walked in majesty from the women's quarters with a numerous train attended by his queen and her crowd of maidens, across to the mead hall. When Hrothgar arrived at the hall, he spoke, standing on the steps under the steep eaves, gazing at the roofwork and Grendel's talon. First and foremost, let the Almighty Father be thanked for this sight. I suffered a long harrowing by Grendel, but the heavenly shepherd can work his wonders always and everywhere. Not long since, it seemed I would never be granted the slightest solace or relief from any of my burdens. The best of houses, glittering and reeked, ran with blood. This one worry outweighed all others. A constant distress to counselors entrusted with defending the people's forts from assault by monsters and demons. But now a man, with the Lord's assistance, had accomplished something none of us could manage before now, for all our efforts. Whoever she was who brought forth this flower of manhood, if she is still alive, that woman can say that in her labor the Lord of Ages bestowed a grace on her. So now, Beowulf, I adopt you in my heart as a dear son. Nourish and maintain this new connection, you noblest of men. There'll be nothing you'll want for, no worldly goods that won't be yours. I have often honored smaller achievements, recognized warriors not nearly as worthy, lavished rewards on the less deserving, but you have made yourself immortal by your glorious action. May the God of Ages continue to keep and requite you well. Beowulf, son of Ecgtheow, spoke. We have gone through the glorious endeavor and been much favored in this fight we dared against the unknown. Nevertheless, if you could have seen the monster himself, where he lay beaten, I would have been better pleased. My plan was to pounce, pin him down in a tight grip and grapple him to death. Have him panting for life, powerless and clasped in my bare hands, his blood in thrall. But I could not stop him from slipping my hold. The Lord allowed it. My lock on him wasn't strong enough. He struggled fiercely and broke and ran. Yet he bought his freedom at a high price, for he left his hand and arm and shoulder to show that he had been here, a cold comfort for having come among us. And now he won't be long for this world. He has done his worst, but the wound will end him. He is hasped and hooped and hurpling with pain, limping and looped in it, like a man outlawed for wickedness. He must await the mighty judgment of God in his majesty. There was less tampering and big talk then from Unferth the boaster, less of his blather as the hall thanes eyed the awful proof of the hero's prowess. The splayed hand up under the eaves, every nail, claw scale, and spur, every spike and welt on the hand of that heathen brute was like barbed steel. Everybody said there was no honed iron hard enough to pierce through, no time-proofed blade that could cut his brutal blood-caked claw. Then the order was given for all hands to help refurbish Heorot immediately. Men and women thronging the wine hall, getting it ready. Gold thread shone in the wall hangings, woven scenes that attracted and held the eye's attention. But iron braced, as the insides of it had been, the bright room lay now in ruins. The very doors had been dragged from their hinges, only the roof remained unscathed by the time the guilt-fouled fiend turned tail in despair of his life. But death is not easily escaped by anyone. All of us with souls, earth-dwellers and children of men, must make our way to a destination already ordained, where the body, after banqueting, sleeps on its deathbed. If you enjoy what I do here, please like and subscribe. Comment down below what story you'd like to hear next, or gameplay you'd like to see. Join us next time for the fourth reading of Beowulf, the victory feast in the Hall of Heorot. I hope these stories inspire you to do better, to be better, and to live in a way that would make your family, your ancestors proud. This has been Doing Stuff Studios. Thank you for listening, and good night.